seen a lot of the world. But again, any number of reasons. What's interesting, though, when you go find the old guys like myself in uniform, you ask them why they stayed in the military and they weren't part of that turnover, the answer comes down to one thing almost every single time, and that's the people. Almost every time you find a leader that's been in more than a couple tours, and they'll say, you know, I stay because of the people I serve beside, people I lead. That's pretty cool. How do you join? Anybody ever taken the ASVAB? I know my veterans have, right? Anybody in my civilians take the ASVAB and decide against going? Okay, very good. Well, excellent decision on your part. Have you taken the ACT or SAT? Okay, you're welcome, because the standardized test was born out of the military. Our standardized testing in World War I, because back then you joined the service and they determined where you served and what you did, and that was done based on a standardized test. So the mother of all standardized testing was World War I. So you're welcome for your MCAT, GRE, LSAT, and all those good tests, right? Anyway, we have sub-scores on that test that determine what kind of jobs you qualify for. So that standardized test, just like higher education uses the ACT as a gauge for potential, we use the ASVAB score as a gauge for what potential you may have in the military, what you might be able to do. What's interesting is each branch of service has their own sub-score just to get in. So that our score doesn't help our reputation in the Army, does it? See, my Navy guys are laughing at me. So 31, so our score is the lowest. And why would that be? Why would the Army have the lowest score? Exactly, you paid attention. The big slide just said we got more people. We're huge, right? We have this massive amounts of seats to fill. We have a lot of folks to recruit, so we can't be as choosy and selective, so our score is a little lower. Very good.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the Marine Corps is higher than the Army?
Sadly, yes.
Okay.
But as far as
That's right there. There we go.
few the proud, few the proud. So it pains me to put that slide up there. It does, trust me. But I understand it and I get it, right? Also, when you look at the Air Force, most of their jobs are technical, right? So they need a little higher ASVAB scores. Also, something interesting, too, is the military uses those ASVAB scores to determine whether or not, let's say you enlist in the military, you decide, I'd like to go to college, I'd like to get a commission. They use those scores to determine if that's doable or not. And then you pass, you get to go to boot camp, basic training, initial winter training, right? I know we have some scarred folks in here who've gone through that, right? I have Drill Sergeant Hickey and Drill Sergeant Smith. Those are two individuals I knew for about 8 weeks. Still remember them, can see them in my dreams or nightmares. 1982, and I still remember these people. My mom calls me every Sunday asking me if I remember my neighbors, and I'm like, who? I don't know who you're talking about, Mom. I haven't been home in 18 years. But I remember my drill sergeants, because they stick with you for the rest of your life, because they have a huge impact in your life. Why are they always yelling? Why is that? Why they got anger management problems? Why are they so angry? Why are they yelling all the time?
Passionate.
Passionate? Okay. They are passionate. They love what they do. Most of them do. What are they doing, though? What's the purpose behind it? Because there is a purpose. Yes, ma'am.
Put you down to build you back up.
Okay, they want to break you down so you don't feel all special, right? Because we're going to break you down, build you back as part of the team. So we're going to crush your individuality, right?
War isn't gentle.
There we go. There we go.
People are in crisis situations.
Very good, ma'am. That's absolutely correct. So we're about to train you to do something that we hope will never come, but it's the most chaotic thing, stressful thing you might imagine. So we're going to throw as much stress on you as we can in this environment and see how you handle it. Because if you can't handle this, chances of you handling combat slim to none, right? So yes, we try to create very stressful environments. Very good. And as Matt will tell you, the Marine Corps' basic training is by far the hardest and longest because they speak slower. Just kidding.
With the higher score on the ASVAB, so it's good.
I'm just kidding. Absolutely right. But anyway, we're teaching you the fundamentals of that individual branch that you've joined, right? We want to teach you the values of that branch. We want to teach you the fundamentals of being a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. It's a huge upfront investment. The military is investing roughly $50,000 per troop as they bring them in. The recruiter will bring them in and train them, okay? As we'll learn, as we kick you out the door at the end of your service, we spend pennies on the dollar to transition you out. Explains a lot, doesn't it, with our transition issues? Because we put this big investment up front, we've used you and run you out, and then we just kick you out the door with transition. So sadly, we're not investing nearly as much on reprogramming you to enter civilian workforce or civilian life. It is a culture shock because there's two different cultures. It's a culture shock entering and leaving. Entering is a culture shock, leaving is a culture shock. Tailored to the service's mission. A lot of physical activity, obviously. We want to make sure that you're physically fit. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, the number one threat to the U.S. military today is not another country. The number one threat to the U.S. military today is the lack of physically fit recruits.
It's the most obese military in the world, in the history.
So our lack of recruitable young men and women is actually our number one issue right now. And as was stated, we are going to break down that self, right? How much does that conflict with today's society? Yeah, someone's smiling. I read recently that each incoming freshman has about 2,000 photos of themselves on their phone. Wow. Pretty impressive, huh? God, I'm good looking. Self-replacement team. So we tend to squash that self-identity, and we want to make you feel that the team's what's important here. And that's obviously important in combat. Life after boot camp. This is where things vary greatly, okay? Life after boot camp. We want to get you your individual skill, your individual job training. But what you do after that, when we send you to a unit, is going to be vastly different. I'll give you an example. Let's say I have two combat medics. I send them down to San Antonio for training. They both graduate as medics, and they're excited. One gets their orders, and oh man, I'm going to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's awesome. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, he shows up, his unit's already in Afghanistan. They just ship him on to Afghanistan. So within days of leaving Fort Sam Houston, Texas, they're in Afghanistan, right? The other combat medic looks at his orders, goes, sweet, Military District of Washington. Go to Washington, D.C. I'm going to be at a major hospital. I'm going to be doing sick call, right? Sick call is just screening in the mornings when people say, I don't feel like going to work. Go get some screening, and we'll determine whether you're able to go to work or not. They get the same benefits regardless of where they end up, okay? So the guy ended up in Afghanistan, or the guy ended up in the Military District of Washington. You get 30 days of leave, you get housing and rations, you get full medical, dental. You have access to all of the amenities, but life is different. That's the one thing I hope you guys take away, that all experiences vary greatly, and we're not all alike, and you can't just put all veterans in a box. On post, these installations, these bases, whatever flavor you're dealing with here, are small towns. They can be like really small, quaint little Mayberries to pretty big towns, actually. PX is a post exchange. It's like a Kohl's or a JCPenney's, back when JCPenney's was good. It's kind of like that. They have commissaries for grocery shopping, tax-free. They have chapels, gyms, hospitals, clinics, theaters, bowling alleys, all the stuff you might imagine they have. They also have schools. So here in Kentucky, we still have schools on our installations. There are downsides to close-knit communities and closed societies on post. Folks tend to know your business and know what's going on. And so some folks, most cases chose to live off post. That was just my selection, but a lot of folks choose to live on post. Day in the life, here's what, it starts early, I can tell you that. Most days start early, and we like physical training, so probably 3 days a week we'll do some PT. Normally while it's still dark, we'll wear reflective things to ensure we're not run down by traffic. But that's how it normally starts. And then we'll do chow and personal hygiene, and then we show up to work. And that's what's interesting. So work might be might be starting with maintenance because we do our own maintenance on our vehicles and so forth. So if I'm an infantry guy, how do I work? What's that mean? It means training. It means I'm going to train and hone my skills continually as an infantry guy, right? If I'm an HR manager or an HR person, then I'm just going to go to an office, work in a cubicle. It's going to look very civilian-like, frankly. So it varies greatly on the military and what you do in the military as to what your day looks like in the military. And oh, by the way, night shift exists as well, 24/7. So there's people who work shift work and work all night long. So again, that's why things vary greatly in the military and experiences vary. Longer days as opposed to the civilian side of the workforce for the most part. Again, they have you under contract so they pay you for whatever, right? 24/7, so whatever you're doing. The operational tempo or the day-to-day operations, one of the first things I did when I retired was kind of hit the brakes because I found that the civilian world didn't move at the pace that the military moved at. I found that the military was moving at a much quicker pace. We tend to do things a lot more mission-focused and a lot more quickly. The dress code is stiffer, as you might imagine, right? We enforce the uniform policies. So you woke up and you didn't have to wonder, oh, what should I wear today? Decision made. We're wearing uniform, right? So uniform code, very strict. Good news is we have different uniforms for different events. So if you've got a formal event, they give you a formal uniform. If you've got to work on the Humvee, they give you a uniform for that too. We have our own justice system. So the Uniform Code of Military Justice is a military justice system. We have our own prisons and lockups for those who violate those regulations and rules and laws. So we can deal with that individually. We do random drug testing throughout the military. You can't just call in. You can't just wake up one day, I don't feel like going in. I think I'm going to call in. It doesn't work that way. If you don't feel like going to work, then you have to go to sick call. If you're not at sick call or at work, then you're AWOL. You're absent without leave. No one's counting for you, so you better be at one of those two places. So when you go to sick call, that medic's going to look at you and go, RTD, return to duty. Okay, there's 3 letters, your nightmare right there, RTD. Oh, God, I'm going to work, right? If they say bed rest or whatever, then you might get a profile or you might get some time away from work, or very worst case scenario, the compound fracture or something, they'll give you some Motrin, right? Send you some Motrin, send you on your way. It's a very rank and authority-based system, obviously. We do other duties assigned, so the reason the days are longer is not you're just a soldier or you're just a lieutenant or you're just this, but you'll also have other duties assigned. For example, as a young second lieutenant, I was also the mess hall officer, right? Dining facilities officer. I was the tax assistance officer. I was the assistant armor for weapons accountability. So they just tack on all these additional duties and responsibilities to your existing job to keep you especially busy. Soldier first, or being that fundamental sailor, soldier, airman, marine, that is the first priority, and they want to make sure those skills are always honed, so you're always training on those. There's an esprit de corps in most military units that it's hard to match on the outside because, again, you're kind of suffering through this stuff day by day, and that builds strong relationships. They do like to party in the military, so alcohol is a strong component of military culture, and the reason that is shouldn't be too hard to figure out. If you go back to the history of warfare, it began with celebration of victory on the battlefield. We celebrate victory. So the military's just turned that into a daily celebration of victory. We survived the motor pool. We survived the inspection. We survived the training, right? Am I wrong? Some of my veterans are laughing because they know I'm right. Right? So that's part of the culture. We move a lot, guys. I was just counting up the other day. 26 years in uniform, I moved 15 times. I relocated to another location to live 15 different times. 2 of those were out of this country. So I lived in South Korea for 18 months and Germany for 3 years. We move a lot, on average every couple of years. Military families, that can be a hardship on them, but they become very resilient. Military kids become very resilient to that. Kind of get itchy feet after a couple of years if you haven't moved. But we tend to be married younger. I mentioned that before. And I hate to say this, but one of the motivating factors for that is extra pay, because A young enlisted person doesn't get paid a lot, but if they marry, they get paid more. So we've had, one of the things we had to fight when I was at a training and doctrine command installation where we're doing that initial entry training was they would make these connections and on a weekend they'd run get married just to increase their paycheck. So part of our job was to try to, squash that. It's not a good idea. Let's talk about it. All right, so let's talk about how that culture impacts transition, because that's why a lot of you are here want to know about transition to the civilian life and what happens. So we opened this thing up with preconceived notion. We all laughed at the Air Force thing because we have a preconceived notion about the Air Force, right? So where do we get our preconceived notions? How do we form those? What's it come from? We've all done research on it, and that's the conclusions we've come to. Where do we get it?
Hollywood.
Movies, right? Hollywood, TV, documentaries. I love those, right? Did you watch that documentary? Because that's got to be true. We call it a documentary. Did I break it again?
I don't think it's you. I think it's something going on with the camera.
Maybe we've got some outdated information. Maybe it's Uncle Joe or Grandpa or somebody. We got some information from somewhere at some point. That's our single point of information, and that's what we've based the rest of our opinions on. We've had that. So we're forming these opinions. We're forming this from something, right? Normally not experience, but some other input. And there's positive and negative preconceived notions, right? So what do you think might be some positive preconceived notions about the veteran population of the military at large? Just that you automatically assign a positive attribute to. Got nothing?
I've actually done military research,
Okay.
so I have a different point.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hardworking.
Okay. That's a positive attribute. Say, hey, they're all hardworking because they were in the military, mission focused, and in that rigorous environment. What else?
Work well in teams.
Work well in teams. They must be team oriented, right? They got to be team focused.
Timely.
What's timely?
Yes.
So good time managers, right? Good time managers. Patriotic. That's a very popular one, right? They're all patriotic. They all serve their country out of love for country. Respectful.
Task oriented.
Task oriented. Mission focused. Disciplined. That's one of my favorites as well. Disciplined. They're all disciplined individuals.
Yeah, overqualified for their position.
Right. Well, overqualified for their position. All right. So positive preconceived notions. You guys have hit most of them. Now the reality is, what we find on a regular basis that especially our young veterans are not the best time managers because their time was managed for them in most cases, right? Because they had to hurry up and wait. So they had point A to point B. They told what to wear, when to be there, what to do. And so when they get out, they find that they got all this vast amount of time and they don't know what to do with it. And so I hear that in the center quite a bit where they'll say, well, I don't know what to do with all my time. And then, so they will get a job. And then they'll start working more hours than they're going to school, which is not a good formula. So discipline. It could be the time management piece of the discipline that drove them out of the military. So you got to keep going back to the 80% turnover rate, right? Not everyone embraced the military lifestyle. Does that make sense? Yeah. If we have an 80% turnover rate, obviously people aren't going, you know what, I think I'll stick around. I'm going to do this. Only the crazy people like me stuck around, right? So 80% turnover. So people are coming in, they're doing whatever they had to do, and then they're done. They've moved on to different things. So to lump all the positive attributes is a mistake, just as the negatives. What's some negative ones?
You can flip those.
Flip them, yeah.
I mean, essentially.
Okay.
For example, you would think that they work well in a team. However, they could be, they could not work well in a
right?
team. Yeah.
Arrogant, that's a big one. What else? What's that? Psychos? Okay, psychopath, killers, right? We're all steely-eyed killers. We've obviously volunteered to kill people. That's why we joined the military.
Everybody suffers from PTSD.
Everybody suffers from PTSD. We're all, riddled with
Time bombs.
We're all ticking time bombs waiting to explode. Very good. What else?
Temperamental.
We're all got some anger issues. We all got some anger issues, right? Go home, kick the dog if wife ain't home, right? That's what you tell them. We have anger issues. What else? You guys want to roll now. You can't make me cry. Don't make me cry. You can't hurt my feelings. What else?
Alcohol problems.
Alcohol problems. Alcoholics, right? What goes with that? Chain smoke. We're chain smokers, right?
Yeah.
We all got nicotine habits.
Unintelligent.
Yeah.
Unintelligent. We're not bright, right? Not the sharpest people in the joint.
Because otherwise we wouldn't have joined the Army.
Exactly.
right?
We had no other choices, right? Last resort. Very good, guys. It was good as a last resort, right? That's, again, what I've heard more and more than once. That we're all infantry, that we're all the killers, right? The trigger pullers. And if we look at the military, you hear the term pointing into the spear is a great analogy because the spear is a great representation of the military. The bulk of the spear is what makes the pointing into the spear effective, right? If we just had the spearhead and we threw that at people, probably wouldn't work so great. But the rest of it's what makes the pointing in effective. That's how most of the military is. Most of the military is what makes our combat folks effective. We support them in whatever it takes to make them effective. That we're regimented thinkers, right? We have no imaginations. We're not creative. Can't write a poem. Can't sing a song. We can't dance. Can't paint and draw. We're regimented thinkers. No place for women. And if they do join, right, got a whole list of adjectives for them. Did you know that female veterans are the #1 less likely to self-identify? And the reason they will not self-identify is because of what people will say about them or think about them. Sad, really. We've talked about minorities and poor filling the ranks, great opportunity for them and privilege. Uneducated, someone said in the back, very good. Baby killers is a holdover from Vietnam, but still today heard. So those are some of the preconceived notions and biases. And here's what's interesting. Here's what I try to get across to folks. Because I tell you, hey, we're all different because our experiences vary greatly in the military. But here's one thing there's two things that all veterans share. The first is they raise their right hand and put on a uniform. That's the first thing. The second thing is they all exited the military and entered a civilian society that already has preconceived notions and biases toward them, regardless of what they did. They could have flipped pancakes in Iowa, and it doesn't matter. Because if they wore a uniform and you're part of the military culture, then you have all these attributes that I've already got in my head about you. So that's the two things they share in common. They raised their right hand, and they exited the military and entered a society that is going to think differently of them. They will not come back, because here's what our young veterans, they think, man, because things are going terribly in the military and they're hating life. They're like, I can't wait to get home, can't wait to get out, can't wait to get back to my friends, can't wait. Then they get out, then they transition back home, and it's like totally different. Because they can't pick up exactly where you left off. You don't fill in that gap, and oh, by the way, like it or not, you're different. You've been changed, right? So you don't pick up where you left off. Now you get out and you go, man, I miss the military. Anybody want to get back in? I want to get back in the military. They come to me all the time asking, how do I get back in? All right, welcome to today's briefing. I'm glad you could be here this afternoon.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about physical requirements and that being kind of the #1 thing that keeps somebody out. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, I guess somebody goes through a physical, or
They do? Yes, ma'am.
What would now?
So any number of things can weed them out. Childhood asthma is a big one right now. Weeds you out. Obesity will weigh you out if you're overweight. So we discriminate against overweight folks every day, right? So if you're overweight, you can't get in. You can actually be too tall or too short, believe it or not, for the military. But childhood asthma or any type of drug like Ritalin or something like that you might be taking as a child.
Tattoos.
Can work against you. Tattoos of certain kinds can keep you out. Diabetes. So I would say childhood asthma, and obesity are the two #1 things right now working against our youth, is keeping them out of the military. So this society's preconceived notions actually create transition issue #1, which is we're all entering back into the society that may have some viewpoint as to their service. Okay? I'm not going to, everyone knows the elements of a culture, the basic elements of a culture, but obviously the U.S. military has all of these, and we're going to hit some of these. It starts at initial entry training. It starts with them yelling at you. It starts with them breaking you down as an individual and building you up as part of a team. From that very first day, you're going to know what, I remember this day writing on my envelope when you're writing home, there's like 6 lines to your address, right? Because it's, you know, 1st squad, you know, 3rd platoon, Alpha company, you just keep going on your envelope. But they made you understand where you were in the unit and where you fit in at. So that unit cohesion creates another transition issue. It creates a transition issue when you lose that, and you no longer have this team that you were a part of. You no longer have this identity built in, and you were a part of that system, right? You lose that, so now you feel, okay, well, I'm out here on my own, don't have anybody to connect with, and frankly, normally the longer that exposure, the tougher the transition. The further removed their military experience was, the harder the transition, right? So if that, you know, obviously if our combat vets, their transitions could be tougher. And here's the thing, guys. I went through transition when I transitioned out, right? So 26 years, and my transition looked exactly like the 18-year-old next to me who was transitioning out because he hurt his leg or hurt his knee in training. Got the same exact treatment going out the door. The guy who has 4 combat deployments has the same transition as someone with 0 combat deployments. Does this make sense? No. DoD needs to do a better job of investing in transition out.
Do they assume that the VA is going to pick up the slack?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, as we all know, the VA is not prepared to do that. All right. So again, another reason that alcohol piece of our culture comes with us a lot of times for our veterans, because it's familiar, it's comforting, and it's something they can bring with them. Structure and change, I just put the Army one up here, but that structure, just to show you how you're built into that. It's not about you as an individual, but in the Army, you can be part of a 4-man team. There's 2 teams in the squad, 3 to 4 squads in the platoon, 3 to 4 platoons in the company, depending on the type of unit, and so on and so forth. And that's how it goes. So again, you're always part of the system. You're always part of something bigger than yourself. Again, it's rank-based. Enlisted officer, with rank comes authority and scope of responsibility. So every time you get promoted, that scope expands. And it's a big day for you to get a promotion in the military, right? 2 of my favorite promotions, #1 was to E5 as a sergeant. That was probably one of my favorite promotions. The second best promotion was to lieutenant. The other ones, I was lucky to get, frankly. Authority and responsibility. So you go from having that authority and responsibility to not having any of that. You don't have the authority, you don't have the responsibility, you don't have the accountability, and you enter this kind of nebulous environment where we're not even sure who's in charge. I have a little tie pin. I didn't wear my tie today. Walt's very upset about that, but it's got my little, about the size of a button. It's got a little tie pin that has my old rank on it, so lieutenant colonel rank. When times get really, really hard, I'll just sit there and rub it and just, you know, think I used to be somebody. I used to be somebody. Right? Because 26 years in the military and achieving the rank of lieutenant colonel, my life was pretty good. When I said something, it got done. I didn't have to wonder later, you know, we're working on that. No, it was getting done. Things happened. In the civilian world, doesn't work that way. Creates transition #3. This loss of structure, this loss of regimen, this loss of responsibility. What is my purpose? What am I doing? A lot of veterans struggle to find the major they want that's going to make them feel purposeful, to make them feel like they're going to contribute, to make them feel like they're going to get something bigger than themselves. If they get lost in that, then a lot of times they revert to, well, I might as well do, if I'm here, I might as well go native and just act like every other college student. That's what Duke's doing. He's going native. He's growing his beard out.
It took me 2 years.